Welcome to Comfort Havoc number 2. My name is James Williams Jr. for now. Still dealing with stage names. So, this video is called Racial Tolerance. I'm picking up where I left off about the Subway story. These are not connected, but they are connected by one simple thing, which is racial tolerance. A lot of people, black, white, Asian, have racial tolerance. Me being multicultural means I don't have the right to be a racist. However, I will say I have the right to chime in on shit that may appear to be hyper racist. And I say that for a reason because, I grew up in a time where, racism was not so much in the closet, but it was a unwritten rule, if you would. There was a thin line between what was racist and what was okay. And then the 90s hit, and everyone and their mama, including white people, started using the word nigger. Now, don't get excited. I'm going to say that a lot, and I'm going to say a lot of other racist innuendos. So if you are very hypersensitive about racial slurs, you may stop this video right now. I'll wait. Get my beautiful hair all combed down and stuff. Because that's a thing. Okay, good. You decided to stay. So let me clarify, in case you missed it or in case you left the video and just came back. I'm going to make some very racist statements. Very, very racist statements. They are going to be racial insults to blacks, to whites, to Asians. Why did I stop the line at Asians? Because if you are not aware, 75% of the planet is Asian. Alright? So let me give you your history lesson real quick, because Native Americans are Asians, no matter what tribe you are from. If you are of North American or South American, if you are Eskimoan, your ass is an Asian. Alright? So henceforth, a lot of my racial insults may go towards some of you. A lot of my racial insults will be towards black people. And I don't really have but 2 words that can really insult white people that I know of, because I'm not a racist, but I've learned some racial slurs toward white people. It's not cool to be racist, period. But if you're going to be racist, there's a time and a place for everything. You want to be racist at home. You're safe there. Don't be racist in the street, because you don't know how someone's going to react. And if you are not willing to get punched in the face, then you should probably be racist at home. Not saying again that being racist is cool, but it's safer to be racist at home and in small groups. Those small groups are basically known as KKK, white supremacists, alt-right, things like that. But you have to remember something. When you go down, you're going to go down by yourself, because most groups, they only follow the leader. And when the leader goes down, they scatter like roaches until someone else rises up to power. This is how racism starts. So without further ado, racial tolerance. Again, I'm a multicultural descent. That being black, white, and Native American. Native American being Cherokee on both sides. Now, here's the thing on that. I didn't know I was part Cherokee to the 5th grade. So I had a lot of white people calling me half-breed. I had a lot of black people calling me half-breed. And once we found out that I was part Cherokee, they had nothing they could call me until I started working at Kegler's, and some white dude who was having some emotional problems wouldn't stop calling me Chief. How you doing? So, that being said, Chief is really the only word for me that, above all else, pisses me off. I don't like being called nigger. But worse than that, I don't like being called Chief. Do not call me Chief. Because for 3 years and some change, there's one guy, and all it really takes is one, wouldn't stop calling me Chief. And it traumatized me to no end that he would not stop calling me Chief. And I wanted to go on the warpath, literally, and just whoop his ass. I also knew that would be bad, because technically he didn't really do anything to me. He just kept calling me fucking Chief. And I kept pointing to my name tag and, "Hi, Chief. How, Chief? Tomahawk Chalk, Chief." And you know how there are some things you have to tolerate just to survive in life. That was my thing. I had to tolerate being called chief every weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday until I got into like the 12th grade. I stopped working on Sundays. It's because my face was shaking and I just couldn't work anymore. And it was just killing me. Plus, I really wanted to graduate, so I had to focus on my studies. Plus, I was having problems at school. And I got a lot of half-breed jokes in high school, too. But mostly, don't call me chief. Half-breed I can deal with because I had to accept that in life. Because I am mixed, and I had to accept that. But for personal space, there's a time and a place for everything, but not in my personal space. And at work, hey chief, you're my personal space, dude. I mean, you're right up in my face and you're calling me chief. And it takes everything I can to keep these clenched fists down here. Okay? Same thing in high school. You ain't no real nigger, you're a half nigger. And you ain't a real honky, you're a half honky. We don't trust you. And that went from grade school to high school. College wasn't so bad. College is still bullying, just, people who have very good jobs and they want to keep them, so I'm not going to out them because I'll give them enough rope to hang themselves. You know you are, you motherfucker. Anyway, moving on. Racial tolerism is something that we need to teach everyone, because there's only so much that a person can take when you're being called out your name, alright? If you're calling somebody who's an Indian, the ones with the dots, not the feathers, if you're calling them Aladdin, what was it? God damn it. Arabian Night. There's two ways they can take that. Because Aladdin technically was a hero, and an Arabian Night is technically a hero. But you can spin that, and it can become racist just like that. Because maybe somebody doesn't want to be going around being called Aladdin. Now, my people from New York called those people who were Indian that ran the stores and all the other stuff, they called them sand niggers. So again, racial tolerance. Racial tolerance has to be taught. We have to have racial tolerance. And I don't want to be called a sand nigger if I'm from India. I don't want to be from Pakistan or India and some black guy who doesn't want to be called a nigger is calling me a damn sand nigger because both our skin is brown and the police pull us over, we're both going down. But that can be said for anybody who's brown. That can be said for Puerto Ricans. That can be said for Mexicans. That can be said for Native Americans. It can be said for Asians. So there's a big misconception about the red man and the yellow man, because the red man and the yellow man are basically the same kind of man. Alright? Native Americans came initially from Mongolia, 20,000 years before Columbus or the Chinaman discovered America. So, fact being spoke, they kind of got some shit twisted up because Native Americans supposedly came first and then splintered down into the Americas, South and North, and some up into Greenland and Canada and shit like that. Well, I think that it actually probably was more like Eskimos came in, tribal dispute, and everybody just started splintering off. Some people just stayed and they were Eskimos, and the Eskimos went up to the northern parts, like where the fucking North Pole and shit is, and they made it all the way over to Iceland and Greenland and right back around to Russia. So, they just kept wandering. And, without any maps, you just keep wandering until you hit water. That's pretty much how that works out. And then for the rest of the neighboring American tribes, they all go down. They hit North America, they hit Canada, and they hit South America. So if you are of Mexican descent, your ass is a Native American. If you are a native from Brazil, from the Amazon, or the Mayans, the Inca, the Aztec, and there's one more, but I can't ever remember it, your ass is an Asian. So every Asian remark reflects you. So, and that includes Mexicans that are called wetbacks, slopes, gooks, slant eye, etc., etc. So you don't want to go around being called that, especially when you have a name, right? You don't want to be walking somewhere and someone sees you and goes, "Hey, you're a gook," and your retort would be, "No, fuck you, I'm from Vietnam." And it's like, no, gooks are from Vietnam. Oh, well then fuck you, I'm Korean. Okay, now I've seen that in a movie. One of the Lethal Weapons. But, at the same time, Chinese and Japanese people get pissed off when you mistake one of them for the other. You have to have racial tolerance. I have also made that very mistake, and I will be honest with you. If you are of any Asian ethnicity, if I don't know your last name, I don't know where the hell you're from. If your last name is Fujiwara, I know you're Japanese. If your last name is Nakamura or Nagano or something in that area, and even Ito, then I know you're Japanese. Now, Chans, Changs, Chins, Chows, Chos, Kims, Parks, all y'all are Chinese and Korean. And I can say that honestly because Chin is a double negative name because it also can be Chinese as well as Korean. And the same thing with cows and chows and chos. And definitely Parks and Pox, etc., etc. And to everyone that's Asian that I just offended, I am highly, definitely sorry. But y'all know how this shit works. Now, when you get into Nguyen's, Nguyen's are interchangeable as well because some of them are Vietnamese and some of them are Korean. I met a Korean Nguyen. Don't ask me how. I met a Korean Nguyen. I also met a Vietnamese Nguyen. I went to school with two from Vietnam a couple of times. I met a Vietnamese Zhang. So, again, it's kind of one of those odds and ends things. But I think what might have happened was during certain countries and occupations, they made citizens change their surname. And that happened a lot. It happened a lot in China with the occupation of Japan. It happened a lot in Korea. It happened a lot in Vietnam. It happened a lot in Laos. It happened a lot in Nepal. So, since a lot of Asia conquered Asia, a lot of their names were changed. When China became China, when it was no longer just Qin and all the dynasties, all the names were changed. When people of the Hun and people of the Mongolians clashed and all that stuff, it's a big clusterfuck. But we're moving on. So you have all these racial slurs, and then anybody black, even if you're from Africa, don't like being called nigger. Period. Don't like being called nigger. Don't like being called chigaboo. Don't like being called Uncle Tom. All these slave sellout insults. Those things do happen, and people are still doing that to this day. And why is that? Because we don't have racial tolerance, and then we also are raising racist. And if we're raising racist, then we're never gonna change it. If you're like, say, I love Asian women. I've never denied that. I never will deny that. And I've always said two things are gonna happen in life. I'm either going to marry a full-blooded Native American girl to go back to my roots, or I'm going to marry me an Asian woman from whatever Asian country I so happen to be blessed enough to get that girl or the bride from. Anyway, that being said, that's just me. It's not that I don't like black women or white women. I've had a lot of bad experiences with black women. I've had a couple of bad experiences with white women. I haven't had too many bad experiences with Asian women. Okay? It ain't about who's better in the bed and all that shit. Now, and the thing with that is, everyone has a preference. Everyone. And if you're on that preference list, cha-ching for you. Explore. Explore. Love everybody. But, when you're in love with somebody, be in love with that person. And not just because of what their race is. But anyway, moving on from there. This is about racial tolerance. When I was growing up in the late 70s, because I was born in 73, so 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 79, I was 6 years old. Alright? So, see, 73, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 79, I was 6 years old. Alright. So by the time I'm 6, I don't know that I'm mixed. My mom is exceptionally white. My dad is no longer living in the house due to the divorce. And my big sister and I were pretty much it. We were hella light. Because, I don't wear long sleeve shirts unless it's exceptionally cold. So we were hella light. Yeah, that was just it. We had different hair from kids in the projects. And our mom always got some strange looks, but we never paid that shit no mind, because when you're a kid, you don't see racism. You don't see race. You just see one other human being right there. And until you are fucked up by an adult, you do not see race. And when you turn a certain age, and especially if you're a white girl, and you like a black boy, And if your parents are racist, they're going to do everything they can to make sure that you don't like black boys or black people. Or they're going to hit you with my favorite. It's okay for you to have a black friend, but you can't have a black boyfriend. If he's your black friend, he can only be your friend. Don't bring him home and do not sleep with him no matter what he tells you. If he loves you, that is not an option. We don't want no mixed breed babies running around. If you think that's not a real conversation, trust me, it's a real conversation at somebody's house right now as I'm speaking to you. So you have to understand racial tolerance. And the thing with racial tolerance is racism is taught, not just systemically. Racism is taught on a cellular level by people in homes that were taught to be racist by the generation before them and the generation before them. And then you have to ask yourself, if everyone on earth is a descendant of a slave or something in that area, just so that you don't know, let me put this to you straightly, because yes, there were white slaves, there were Native American slaves, there were Chinese slaves. But the reason why they're not called slaves was because they were called indentured servants, which is indentured servitude to pay your debt if you came to this country from the Golden Palace, because America is the streets paved with gold. You were a celestial industrial servant. If you were a Native American, your ass was captured and they didn't kill you and they didn't lock your ass up, you were a mongrel servant. If you were white and you went from England or any of those other countries to America, in your servitude, you were an indentured servant. And why were you an indentured servant? Because you had to work for the people who brought you over until you could pay for your freedom or until your ass could escape to Canada. But at that time, Canada did not exist until people settled it from France and wherever the hell else they settled it from. I don't know that much about Canada, but I do know that by the time the 100-year mark of slaves came around, Canada was really established by then. And then there was Harriet Tubman getting people to Canada. Now, and I don't think she ever took anybody to South America, but I'm pretty sure she mostly took people to Canada. And if not Canada, then at least New York, because by then slavery was abolished up north. All right, which goes back to that video. Why would this white lady go around calling these black people niggers and shit? Alright? Now, the only words that I know for sure that are effectively racist towards white people is honky and crackers. Now, I watched Roots once, and that's when I found out that white people started calling themselves crackers. And I was like, okay, I didn't really get that. I knew what a Quaker was, you know, like those pilgrims with the fucked up ass shoes. I knew what a Quaker was, but I didn't know that white people called themselves crackers. And then black people up north, New Yorkers, thanks New York, started calling white people crackers, and that started coming down south. And every time somebody from New York seen a white person that pissed them off, like, you cracker ass motherfucker. And I'm like, did this guy just call this guy cracker? Now see, around here, it was like, you got white bread, wheat bread, and you have toast. And toast has different levels of blackness. Okay? So, I have racial tolerance because I've been wheat bread. Alright? I've even been toast. See the butter? Yeah. You'll get that joke later. But the whole point is, you know, in my racial tolerance, I've had a few bad experiences from white people. I've had more bad experiences from black people, and a one-time or two-time incident with Asians. My first bad experience with Asians was with me in the Zhang from Vietnam, when I thought he was Chinese because his last name was Zhang, and I told him to go home and eat rice cakes. He said, fuck you, I'm from Vietnam and we don't eat rice cakes. So, hello Zhang, I'm sure you don't remember me. But anyway, that being said, that was my first one. And my second one, because Native Americans are also Asian, I was trying to mess with this Native American girl, and whoever her guardian was at the time, because they were the wheelchair basketball team, told me don't talk to his charge because I'm not pure blood. That hurt my feelings a little bit because growing up and visiting my grandmother's mother during the summertime, because she died when I was 12, so I had a good few years with her. She told me all kinds of stories about Native Americans and stuff, and she not one time ever said anything to me about not being pure blood. I didn't know what that meant, and it never came up during our whole entire lifetime that I had Mama Ada. There was never a mention of being pure blood. Now, that was something I learned in my 20s, and that shit had me, like, perplexed. I was like, what the fuck does that mean? Then everything started coming back, and I was like, okay. So this explains why the guy would stop calling me Chief, because apparently to some people I don't look black enough. And so he kept calling me Chief. And then, to top that off, lots of people that I had met had always thought that I was either Hawaiian or Mexican, but they never thought I was black. And I would explain to them that I'm multicultural. And then I've had some people come to me and say, are you some kind of Indian or something? And I'm like, yes, yes I am. I have Cherokee blood as well as black and white blood. I've never denied that shit, but I seem to be the only one in the family on both sides that fully embrace my heritage. Alright, that being said, I don't go around calling people nigger. I don't go around calling people slant-eye, gook, slope, etc., etc. I don't go around calling people crackers or honkies. For the purpose of this video, I use those words as I end this video and go into part 2 of racial tolerance.